Will the courts cope with the removal of Section 21? Today I'm joined by David Smith, who's considered by many as the voice of lettings law when it comes to solicitors. Thank you for joining me today, David. We're filming this a few weeks before the election. I'm not sure when this video will be coming out, but on the assumption that Labour do get in and Section 21 will be removed, will the courts be able to cope? Talk to me.
Well, in a word, no. I mean, they're barely coping right now. To give you a sort of quick spectrum of horror stories, if you have a small claims matter for small amounts of money, those now take 12 months to be heard before someone will actually listen to your case in court. I routinely have possession cases being listed 5 to 6 months out. Even when I've got a possession order, I routinely have bailiff appointments being listed up to 12 months later, which has got to be unacceptable, because at that point, a court's already decided that the tenant should be leaving. But you can't enforce that unless you go through the court bailiff system. So if you take Section 21 out of the equation, basically there's approximately the same number of standard possession matters going to a court hearing as there are accelerated possession matters, which are paper only, Section 21 only. They both sit around the same number. So in principle, if you have all the same number of possession actions, I probably won't, but there'll be some drop. But obviously lots of Section 21 possession actions happen for reasons, and those reasons won't go away. People will still want to sell houses, which is why some Section 21s happen. People will still have rent arrears, which brings up another chunk of Section 21s. You'll have antisocial behaviour, which is another chunk of the Section 21 market. There's obviously some Section 21s people just don't like the tenant, and those will go away. But in principle, you're going to come close to doubling the number of possession actions, which will all have to be heard by a court with an actual judge in attendance, rather than being pushed through paperwork. So a court system that's already in some difficulty is going to have twice as many actual hearings, which it cannot do.
What is the answer then? I mean, is it going to be? Is it?
Money would be a good start.
Yeah, but there's not much of that flying around, is there?
No, and perfectly justifiably, really, most increased spending in justice tends to go towards criminal justice matters, because you've also got really unsatisfactory delays in serious sexual offence cases, for example, and you can't possibly say that waiting 2 or 3 years for one of those cases to come on before a judge should be deprioritised against possession cases, much as some people might think it should be. It's not a practical and reasonable response to the situation. So what can happen? The court system is very inefficient. I mean, really crashingly inefficient in terms of the quality of its computer systems, and how they actually dovetail. You could go a long way just by spending a relatively modest amount of money upgrading and improving the computer system. The government has tried to do this many times.
Probably should get Fujitsu in.
Well, in practice, you probably will end up with Fujitsu doing it. One of the things that made me smile ironically about the Post Office Horizon system is they're talking about removing convictions against post office staff. They're all going to be removed due to the convictions bill. But who runs the database of national offenders? It's run by Fujitsu. So you're going to have to go back and ask them to make sure that all of these offences are wiped off people's records. So I suppose I'm sure they'll be very good at it, but hopefully better than when they ran Horizon. The history of government IT projects is pretty poor. The government was supposed to be having a project to digitize the possession system and make it more effective, and it's run into the sand. And they shortly before the election, about at the beginning of this year, I think, said that they were going to produce about £1 million to move it forward. But in the context of these things, £1 million is a microscopic amount of money. I know it feels like a lot of money to people. You know, if someone said to me right now, "Would you like £1 million?" I'd be like, "Wow, yes, thank you." But in the context of running, a national computer system for all of the courts in the country, £1 million is a drop in the ocean. And then You've also got a massive shortage of judges. You've got a pretty poor set of court buildings. So in terms of what I think we should do, I think a lot of property tribunal judges could hear county court cases. I think we could do more there. We could improve the quality of the computer systems. That would help. And it would allow people to process more of their own paperwork effectively without the court staff having to do it, which would take some pressure off court staff to be turned to actually areas where they needed to do things specifically. Probably controversially to some people, you could actually improve legal aid funding. It's quite cheap, doesn't cost a huge amount, and actually having more tenants represented in court would mean that more things were dealt with at first instance, rather than what you have now is where just before they're evicted, they may somehow get a lawyer to suspend the eviction, and it all has to go back and be reheard. So I think the reality is it'd be better if more of these points were ventilated earlier on, and if people genuinely have a defence, it was sorted out, or they're told by a competent solicitor, actually you don't have a defence and you really ought to leave. So a better structure to help people get some proper advice earlier. And I don't see any particular reason why you need the county court bailiffs. We've privatised the High Court Sheriff system many years ago. It's much more efficient. It's a bit more expensive, but most people would pay for that. I see no particular reason why the county court bailiff system needs to continue to be run by the county courts. I think it should be privatised. And you could charge a fee for that, so the government will get some money through the door, and get the final stage moving more effectively. I think a lot of landlords would, having waited quite some time for a possession order, what really sticks in their craw in many cases is being told they have to wait another load of months to have a possession order actually enforced. And while that's not going to fix it, that gets you some quick wins which start to move things forward.
David, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.